So I'm sat here with Cal Newstead, or Kelly. You got to forgive my Worcester accent because I say my A's like Cal instead of Kel.
No problem. I can be Cal or Kel.
That's perfect. Cool. So Cal is going to join us this week on the podcast just to give us a little bit of an insight into yoga, her experiences, how it can benefit or not benefit maybe performers within the music industry, the entertainment industry. Hopefully she's going to talk a little bit about her experience, what she's been through and her journey. So hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, it's all right. It's a pleasure. So what got you into yoga in the first place? Where did it all begin for you?
Such a good question. My yoga journey, which is, excuse me, such a yoga teacher thing to say, began probably 11 years ago, maybe more, maybe 12 years ago when I first moved out of home. I live in the city here in Adelaide, and the only yoga that was around at that time here was Bikram. And so that's how my yoga journey began for a couple of years. It just was about practicing Bikram and getting sweaty with 60 other souls in a room, and turning into a puddle. It's how my yoga started.
So for people who might be listening to this and haven't got much experience in yoga, can you kind of describe what Bikram is? Sure.
Well, Bikram is actually the name of the founder of this style. There are different styles of movement in yoga. There's lots of different names for lots of different things, but Bikram is a style of yoga where you practice the same 26 postures, or I think it's 26. In the same order for the same amount of time for a 90-minute class. The room's heated to I think it's 40 degrees. Where I went, I felt like it was like Mordor when I went.
Mordor yoga.
Yeah, it was really, really bloody hot. There's mirrors, there's fluoro lights, and it's it was my first introduction to yoga that didn't look like someone in an orange robe, which was my original idea of what yoga was. But Bikram was the physicality of being really, really hot and pushing really, really hard, and that's the style.
That doesn't sound very relaxing.
Looking back now, I mean, it's been 12 years. I've been to Bikram, once or twice in the last kind of 10 years. But looking back, I think that there, for me, definitely was benefit in the repetition of practice. So in some ways, there's a tune out of what's going on externally and a tune in of what's occurring internally when you practice the same thing for the same amount of time under the same conditions, and the one thing that changes is you. So I think that it can be relaxing in a way, in terms of like there's a methodical way about it that doesn't require a lot of thinking a lot of the time, and it naturally what occurs is a bit more feeling. But for me, it was a style, and is still, where what I feel and felt was stress.
Now you've moved more towards, I would say exclusively towards vinyasa, or?
Well, interesting. I practice a style that kind of falls under what you would call like hatha yoga or power vinyasa yoga. There's different lineages. There's a long lineage tree that I'm not going to get into today because I don't have a textbook in front of me. But where the physicality of what I teach and what I practice is called vinyasa. It's one style that I practice where there's a lot of physical movement. I practice other styles as well, and I teach another style called yin. So yin, if you think of vinyasa as being a more fluid, dynamic, one breath, one movement. It's a breath-centric focus, and an asana, which is a posture or shape-centric focus to move you towards the inner world. Vinyasa is the physical, and yin is kind of more like the yang, or like the dynamicism, the movement. For me, it feels like a dance. It feels almost like a dance.
Okay.
Yeah, and yin, the other style that I teach, is it's a practice that's a lot kind of younger in terms of how long people have been putting this particular style of posture into their practice. And it's a floor-based practice generally where you let time, body weight, and gravity do the work, and you're propped up. And it stresses more into joints and ligaments to find new synovial fluid into the joints and ligaments rather than and joint capsules particularly, but rather than using muscular contraction, which you would use in a vinyasa practice.
Okay.
That's a lot of jargon.
No, I mean, it's interesting to know. From all about, one thing I really wanted to touch on, which interested me, was what you meant by the inner world. That sounds pretty it sounds pretty exclusive. Like we're not privy to know what that is.
Yeah, well, it's different for everyone. I read this beautiful quote from a beautiful yoga teacher in Sydney a while ago, and she said, "The job of the yogi is to traverse the inner world." And that's kind of if I was to teach you or to teach anyone a traditional yoga class, I would be in meditation for an eon. That's the real yoga. Yoga, the word means to yoke or to unionize or to merge, basically. And it's to merge the individual with the greater cosmos or the divine or God or whatever you want to call it. Use whatever vernacular makes you happy. But that is that's the basis of where the practice, what we would call the practice of yoga, comes from. So yeah, I use that term a lot in my own practice. I'm traversing the inner world. What's occurring for me inside is different for what's occurring for you.
Okay. But
we're two drops in the same ocean, and at the same time, we're the ocean in two drops.
So it's very much about connectivity and or being part of something bigger? Completely,
yeah. It's being attuned to your own, to know that you are not separate from anything else.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a really definitely a philosophical concept that we definitely, for me as a vinyasa teacher, part of what I teach and part of what I attempt to teach in some way or another, and part of what I learn when I'm teaching, is how to dissolve the barriers between you and me, or me and the world, or me and that dickhead who cut me off in traffic. Like, to understand, like to realize what's occurring inside.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Yeah, for sure.
But I find it very interesting with yoga because it's, am I right in saying it, because it's not what we would probably think of as a formal religion?
Correct. It's a spirituality, or I butted up against this when I was doing my teacher training quite drastically. I came from a household that was not just not religious, but anti-religion.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it took a lot of self-traversing or self-work, really, or like exploring what I thought and what I really genuinely felt about that idea of ascribing toward a way of thinking that was regimented, but not in a religious context for me. For me, it feels, and lots of texts, there's really beautiful, what would I call him? He's like a professor of yoga. He's passed away now. His name's Georg Ferrestein, and he's a scholar of yoga, and he talks about yoga as not being a religion as such. It's a spirituality. The way I like to think about it is just your way of being, how you are. Because eventually the way and what you see when you're moving in a room where it's hot and you're a bit tired and the teacher's asking you to do some not even crazy ass pose, but like to stay there, standing on one leg for like a minute and a half, and you're like, what the fuck, man? Like, why? There's all this other stuff that comes up that isn't necessarily, that isn't just that you're standing on one leg. Like, there's other things that come up, and how you deal with that translates itself from this moment or that moment standing on one leg to how do I feel when my partner doesn't empty the dishwasher? Okay. Like, how do I feel about death? Like, it all translates itself into every facet of your life. For me, that's my experience.
Okay. No,
that's my
great,
experience. Yeah.
I guess it's one of those, and I know you're certainly not trying to impose this, but it's not like a rule of thumb, like, this is how yoga works, and this is the only way you can view it. Absolutely not.
There's nothing like that. As far as I know, no. I mean, definitely, I come from a studio and a lineage that isn't dogmatic. Mm-hmm. So any dogma that I have around is in yoga, I would say sits firmly in the postural world. and that means in terms of body movement, and that dogma is surrounding joint health long term.
Yeah.
That's where my dogma sits. My dogma does not sit around like chant this many times a day, or I don't know, like anything, or think this way, or love every single human you ever meet. Like it doesn't, ideally I'd love to do that, but I can't. Like the transcendence of that is full on, and I just think, I've got a couple more lifetimes to go before I stop flipping off the guy who cuts me off in traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's funny how you say it's got a relation to everything else you do in life, and something I found with musicians or actors or anybody in that kind of entertainment industry is, and it's so easy to generalize this, but we go on stage and you're putting on an act, you're putting on a show, and you're wearing one mask.
For sure.
And what you see is that person on stage, and then they could come backstage and be an absolute dick to someone, treat the staff bad, or be feeling horrible inside.
Yeah.
Do you think, it's a very broad question, that the practice of yoga can I don't want to say make you happier because that seems way too broad, but can it have a positive impact on your life?
Do I believe that? Absolutely. In my experience, that's exactly what you've just described has transpired for me. So the masks or the facades that I used to wear, and the transitioning from, and I'm not saying I don't transition between work and home. Like, of course, I naturally transition, or when I'm teaching a class to when I go home, and when I'm with my parents, am I a bit different to when I'm out on a Saturday night? I don't go out on a Saturday night, but if I was to go out on a Saturday night, like, would I be different? I'm joking, I do go out sometimes.
It's alright.
Like, would it be different? Yes, of course, but the underlying who I am doesn't change as much. So the me that you see now, and the me that you see when I'm teaching a yoga class, we're the same person. And so for me, in my own personal studying, my kind of delving into the world of yoga, yes, exactly that. I have become I wouldn't say that the pathway is a happy one at all times, but the likelihood that day to day I feel more settled and grounded and like loved by myself is much higher. That happens a lot more for me. Yeah, for sure. But to get there for me, there's been a lot of other kind of extremely uncomfortable things that I've looked at and felt, more importantly than, logically understanding. I quite like logic, and I am, the girl that loved algebra at school. But, for me, my experience is I am more comfortable within myself and more able to express that in a way that's authentic without having to have one mask for here, one mask for there, because that's tiring.
It is.
It's exhausting, and it's debilitating for some people. It's extremely debilitating. And the lie or the inadequacies that you feel, that I have felt, I will use myself as an example, that I have felt, they don't have as much power when you look at them when you truly look at them and truly feel them and understand where they come from. And there's yogic philosophy around that. That's been my teacher training experience with, particularly with powerlifting, but with other studios as well.
It's really interesting touching on the self, and you say about like the masks we have to wear. And I remember listening to a podcast with Gene Simmons on it, the guy from Kiss.
Yes.
And he was saying, always look like a star. So when he's on stage, when he's doing a press conference, whenever he's in the public eye, which is whenever he steps outside, he's got to have, like the leather jeans on, and he's got to be Gene Simmons, he's got to be that rock star. And he has to put that on constantly, all day. And obviously I don't know Gene Simmons, I can't speak for him. But it sounds tiring. And it's just a constant act.
Yeah, and we all do it. Like, whether you think you do it when you walk on stage, and I mean, for some people, definitely maybe for some people that's their living, and there's a necessity of that in a certain way to play a role or to have a role. And I don't want to speak for whether or not that's right or wrong. I think that in some cases 100% that's entirely appropriate. For Gene Simmons to rock up to a Kiss concert and not look like the guy who's fronts Kiss would be a rip-off. Like,
it is, isn't it? You expect it.
Yeah, there's
like, where's the makeup?
there's an expectation that He will look and behave a certain way.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't resonate, in my opinion, if that doesn't resonate at all with who you are and how you feel or can feel, because I assume you have to get pretty bloody amped up to rock up as Gene Simmons, then yeah, that to me is where the dis-ease is. The uncomfortableness of moving from one place to another. And I'm not Gene Simmons by any stretch, but I obviously.
Wait, what? What am I interviewing you for?
Rip off. No, but I definitely think that in the past, I believe in the past for me, I had one way of being and then multiple other ways of being that all felt fake.
Okay.
Not one of them felt real enough because the real thing wasn't allowed to be there for me.
I see. I've got so many questions, and we're touching on all of these points, and I'm gonna end up backtracking to some of this stuff. But
I also don't have multiple personality disorder. Just
I'm not judging. It's fine. It's all good.
It's a real thing, and I just want to be clear. It's the extremity of it is for most of us not as extreme as Gene Simmons. And I'm not saying that he does have any disorders whatsoever, but what I mean is they can be subtle things, subtle changes in my experience. They don't have to be these huge makeup, no makeup, you know.
It is very weird when you read about some of these rock stars, and like Alice Cooper, he's Damien Fournier, I believe is his real name, and he's this like Alice Cooper, the guy you see on stage with the snakes and beheading people and all this horrific stuff. He teaches Bible classes to children away from the stage, and he's a completely different person.
And they might both be true.
I mean, if he's happy, good on him. It's just about, that sounded quite Australian, didn't it then? Good on him.
Good on him.
Was that?
Yeah, it was pretty close.
I'm getting a bit, I'm getting kind of local now.
It's getting under the skin.
Yeah. Just before we move on, I had a really cool quote the other day, which, well, not really a quote. It's not, I'm going to come up with some great, Dickens wrote. Which was, in a bar, somebody, like a bartender was saying to a woman, he was like, oh yeah, do you want a schooner? Do you want a pint? And she went, oh, we're not here to fuck spiders.
Oh yeah, that's an Aussie thing.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And
we're not here to fuck spiders.
We're not here to fuck spiders.
Yeah,
I was like,
bit,
cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about, I know, right? It just stays with you, doesn't it?
Yeah, keep going. We're not here to fuck spiders.
Yeah. Going back to what you just mentioned about being fake, I'm really interested in how yoga is portrayed in the media, because there seems to be so many different, like you were saying about Bikram, which is just a lot of sweaty bodies in a room, and then there's this kind of calming nature to it, and there's kind of what I like to call mum yoga, when it's, it's like, oh, we're in our 30s or 40s, but we're still cool, we're working on our mum bods, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But, even to the point where you look on Instagram and people, it's like, oh, here's me doing these amazing poses, which most of us probably can't ever do. And it's all, just to get Instagram followers. I mean,
totally.
Does that annoy you?
Does it annoy me? The sad thing about being a yoga teacher in this day and age is that a method to connect with people is social media. But going back to kind of the first part of what you said, yes, I think that in media or in general populace understanding, what does the word yoga mean? Like, for most people, what they think of is some crazy headstand or a handstand or some, pose where you're a pretzel. And the reality is, for most people, that is not only not attainable, it's irrelevant. Like,
why? Why is that irrelevant?
I think it's irrelevant because it says nothing to how you are.
Okay.
Like being able anatomically to hold a handstand says nothing about the state of your relationship with your mother-in-law or the state of your relationship with yourself or your mental health. It says nothing, in my opinion, about how you really are. So from moment to moment, there is in me an envy that I can't hold a handstand for 10 seconds. But there's also in me, the understanding that physicality is for the physical nature of yoga, as in what we in the West understand as yoga, because it's different in the East, but what we understand in the West as yoga is the pathway in. So it is the way that people come to yoga. That's how I came. I came for the physicality, for the sweat, for the like repetition, for the being almost like borderline told off in a yoga class, like paternally, not maternally, like told off.
Yeah.
That is for people the first step, foray into yoga. For many, not for all, but definitely for many. And I think that there is, in the society I live in right now and the one I operate in, if that's the step in, great.
Yeah.
Come in, because in my experience, it's an inclusive place. It's not an exclusive place. But the things you see appear exclusive, and the pathway to get to the posture or to get to the whatever realization you have or transcendence or whatever you want to call it isn't overnight.
No. It's pretty amazing. I had a conversation with Adam, one of the other yoga instructors.
Yeah, Adam Whiting.
Yeah, he's great, right?
He's a phenomenal teacher. He's my teacher. When I think of someone who's my teacher, Adam is someone that I'm like, I will sit at your feet and I will listen to whatever you say. He's
great. He's so knowledgeable, and he's just hilarious to be in a class. It's difficult to be in his classes because he just makes you laugh. I mean, you nearly fall over. But it's all fun. And we were talking today about drunk yoga, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but have you not? It's so much fun.
Is it? Okay.
It's yeah. A friend of mine, we'd had like a few beers, and I don't know why we were just, because she does a bit of yoga as well. We were like, oh yeah, we just can't do that side crow. So
yeah.
I don't know
why not now.
Which is to people who don't know, it's
an arm balance. Yeah, it's where you twist it over. So you're squatting down, knees together. You twist over to one way, hook the elbows on the outside of the thigh, and then you balance on your hands, toes off the floor. Yeah.
So you're levitating your whole body weight and just resting it. Yeah. So we tried doing it on concrete after a couple of beers. No, we were all right. Okay. It was okay. We sort of slipped a bit and had a laugh, but it was okay.
Yeah.
And then I told Adam this, and he was like, "Okay, let's do it properly."
Yeah. Yeah. Because that for like in this day and age, that's the dogma of keeping people safe.
Right.
Because I teach a lot of level 1 classes, as in there's not a huge distinction between level 1 and level 2 at the studio that I teach at, but there is in a level 1 class like, hey, let's move you pathway to pose, as in this is going to take you a year, but let's move you there safely. Yeah. So, and at some point for sure you're going to have to lift your feet off the floor, which means there's a 10 centimeter possibility that you're going to face plant, and at one stage you will, and you will be okay because it's only 10 centimeters. But there's fear around that for people, but that's the dogma of keeping people safe, that we're like this way so you don't insert injury here. And there are lots of injuries in the yoga world.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today, because myself, I've suffered with like wrist injuries and from playing drums, and I know some older drummers, and like guitar players, any kind of musicians really, who have been playing with instruments on their back and lugging gear in and out of vans for 10, 20, 30 years. And obviously it's going to weigh you down after time. Do you think that there are physical benefits towards yoga, but equally, if it's practiced wrong, we can actually hurt ourselves more?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, let me just think about that for a second. Yes, I think that my first answer is yes, of course. I think there are physical benefits to yoga. Motion is lotion. Moving yourself around is the best way to physically keep your body safe. They say the next best posture your best posture is your next one. So the staticness that a lot of people experience, repetitious sitting down, a lot of people, spend hours every day seated, neck reaching forwards, slumped over, shoulders protracted. Like they spend a lot of time, but not with any strength, just passively protracted, or they spend a lot of time looking in a certain direction or whatever it is. Yes, I think moving around is definitely, like, speak to any physiotherapist, they're going to be like, move the fuck around. But I think like anything, too much of doing the same thing creates not rhythm, it creates like you wear the effects of doing the same thing no matter what you do.
Mm.
If you always eat KFC, you're going to wear the effects of always eating KFC.
Yeah.
If you always practice, if you only ever practice yoga, you're going to wear the long-term effects of only ever practicing one modality of movement.
Okay.
If you play guitar or drums,
Mm-hmm.
8 hours a day for 6 days a week, you are going to wear the effects of that.
Yeah.
And it's true across all parts of our lives, but I think that something that definitely in my teaching is more prevalent now is how can we incorporate different styles of movement so we stay healthy.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you always do a push activity, or if you always do a pull activity, or if you're dominant with, your right hand, how can you become more competent in your left, or how can you take pressure away from that area and use other muscles that sit in the same area to keep yourself healthy and well. Okay. So yeah, that's my opinion. Physically, I'm not a physiotherapist. I need to put that out there right now.
Yeah.
Every class I teach, I feel like I'm like, P.S. I'm not a physio. I can't diagnose anyone. But we at Power Living Studio, we have physiotherapists that work with us. In fact, one of the co-owners is a physiotherapist.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So everything that we teach, and definitely I think that our studio, I don't want to blow smoke up our own ass, but is at the forefront of offering healthy mobility for people within the spectrum of yoga.
Yeah. So it is knowing what you're doing, getting the right advice, because a lot of people practice yoga at home and going off YouTube videos, which I'm sure is fine, but you don't.
There's nothing wrong with that.
You don't know if you're doing it wrong a lot of the time. But the guy on the screen isn't going to be like, "Whoa, hang on a sec. This is going to hurt you if you do this. Your knees over your toe or whatever it is. This is going to."
Yeah, that's right.
You
As well, there's a bit of like people. I've noticed it's hard for people to know where they are in space. Like whenever you start doing any movement, I recently started doing Pilates. It's really hard.
Okay.
And it's been a while since I've started a new activity that I had no familiarity with, because I already go to the gym, I practice lots of yoga, I walk a lot, but I don't do any jumping, I don't do any swimming, I don't do any contact, I don't do any pulling. So Pilates is all pulling. And at some points I'm like, which is my right arm? And I'm standing here setting up to do this movement, and until you learn where you are in space, it's like learning a new language. It's like learning music, or like learning Hindi, or learning like learning to row a boat. It could be anything. Okay. It's a learning pattern, but practice repetitively. There could be injury, maybe not. I don't think that yoga, I don't think any movement is inherently dangerous. I just don't believe that.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
So in terms of the mental benefits, how do you think yoga can play a part in our lives?
Good question.
I left that pretty open because I kind of want to see where you go with it.
Yeah. Mental benefits. I feel like mindfulness is this term that just gets like chucked around these days.
I'm so glad you said that word, because that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get into this. Let's get into mindfulness.
It gets thrown around, and there's colouring books for mindfulness, and I'm down for it. And I think it's fine. But I think that people who practice anything or who self-examine, there's an onus on that person to understand where they're at with their own mental health, because that is kind of a caveat that I would like to put on anything that's offered in the yoga realm. Mm-hmm. It is not, in my very inexperienced opinion, a substitute for clinical mental health, or, for the realness of surviving in the world.
Right, yeah.
I think that, for sure, the self-awareness and awareness of what my mind is thinking has improved given over the time I've been practicing yoga.
Yeah.
For example, I used to become, one of my reactions when I feel triggered or uncomfortable is that I become very angry.
Yeah.
And that's how I choose to react. And what I've come to realize in my own mental patterning is that that's what occurs. Because prior to that, it's just this thing that happens and I have no fucking idea how it's happening. And I always feel bad after and I feel shit during. And I don't know how I've ended up at this point where what's occurring is this uncomfortable interaction with someone or with myself. So the anger that I'm feeling, I had no clarity on how that was occurring.
Yeah.
So the healthy mental state for me has been improved because I can see how that occurs now. A better example is I used to go to this yoga teacher's class, and for like 6 months I went to this chick's class and I fucking hated her. Like, I actively didn't like her. So I actively went to her class more. And I was like, what is occurring for me when I'm here? Why am I so riled up? Like, I would go and be like, oh, I fucking hate her. And I would go, it sounds sadistic, I would go and I would go, what is going on for me? Like, because originally I was like, I don't like her, I don't like this. Okay. And then I was like, why don't I like this? What's going on for me about why I'm not liking this? And until I got to that point where this, like, it's like a switch flipped and I went, you know, there's this thing I don't like about her. I don't feel connected to her, and so I'm angry. My reaction is anger. I'm triggered about this. My reaction is anger. And then the next part is, do I want to keep doing this? That for me is more mentally healthy than avoiding her, one, or continuing to be angry and having no clarity on why.
So it's a lot of self-awareness, almost self-examination as well.
Traversing the inner world.
Okay.
What is occurring?
I see what you did there. You kind of brought that back full circle. It's
what
good.
is occurring for me? Yeah, for sure. And there's there's a lot of really excellent reading / self-improvement work you can do around understanding behaviors, triggers, mental patterning, etc. And how and what the feeling is behind that. Because for me, when there's all these different examples I have, but for me, when there are other times when I feel really triggered by situations and I try and control them, or I become aggressive or angry. Aggressive is probably a little bit strong now, but like aggravated or bitey, I would kind of describe it as like bitey. What's occurring for me, the feeling is that I feel scared. And so to understand where in the past that comes from, again, there's a whole lot of literature around this. It's not like kelly.com, but you know, to understand where that comes from and then to see that as a rational adult and a rational adult at a point in their life when they can see it. And you know, for me, my experience of seeing stuff like that is that I feel embarrassed and I feel shame and I feel sadness. And to sit with that for a little while, not to live there or wallow there or whatever, but to have an awareness around what's the trigger and what I've chosen, and then why that's happened. And then that I can see that as a rational adult opens the door to what else is available. Because without the what else is available, you know, it's pretty hard to move towards a more, you know, holistic, who am I really? Who do I want to be? Who am I really? Am I scared, Kelly, all the time when I'm uncomfortable? And I don't want to live there. I don't want to live there.
No, of course.
I don't think many people want to live there.
No.
But in my experience, if I didn't examine where that came from, then my own capacity to change that situation wasn't there. And now it is. Great. And so that's the mental health component for me. Also, neurologically, putting yourself in a situation where you are uncomfortable but you are safe trains your brain to be able to deal with being uncomfortable. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of pain research and science around that. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's not my area of expertise. Right. But NOI is a great institute that does a lot of pain research, and they are definitely worth having a look up if you want to know more about it. They're really, really awesome and to understand. So this is, you know, when you're in a class, you're not asked to go into a pose where you're really challenged necessarily in the first 10 minutes, for example. Yeah. Because there's a level of safety that your body creates. Okay. So you feel safe enough to explore. That's not mental health necessarily, but it can be.
But one thing I really like about yoga is, from talking to you, it's I like that it's not a one size fits all. It's not that you come in and, like, going back to the medium, the handstands and stuff. it's not like, cool, well, you've been coming here 6 months, you better get that handstand together.
Yeah.
I mean, like really, like in your honest opinion, as someone who's practiced yoga for, what you said, about 12 years in
On
total
and
now?
off. Yeah, I cheated on yoga for a while with horse riding. Yeah.
Okay, that's a pretty good substitute.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like, you know,
Anyway.
you weren't at yoga, it's like, yeah, just riding the horse.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like, you know, these headstands and
Yeah.
all these like, over-the-top poses, what's the point in them? Is there any benefit
It's a good question.
other than trying to make yourself feel better, saying, look what I can do, and this is something you can't do? Because I feel like that's what happens on Instagram.
Yeah, I believe there is. There's a couple of angles to answer that question. One of them, again, is that a physically healthy body will last you longer than an unhealthy physical body. We're living in an era where the people who will live to 100 have already been born.
Yeah.
And they will need their physical shell body to survive.
Mm.
So physically putting your body under challenge, whether that's at yoga, whether that's lifting weights, whether that's body combat, whatever you do,
Yeah.
yes, I believe that there are physical benefits to physical challenge.
Okay.
Absolutely. I also, I'm just trying to remember the front end of the question again. Hang on.
No, it's just wondering how you think that.
Yeah, I've got one more thing to say about that.
Yeah, go for it.
The physicality of particular types of postures, the history around that is that certain types of postures elicit certain responses in the body. And again, this is Eastern before there was what we would call kind of Western medicine around what happens if you do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So Eastern wise, yes, there are physical benefits to, there are energetic benefits to taking a particular style of practice. So a while ago, I'm not an expert on this at all, in a more traditional Hatha yoga style practice, what would be called a moon practice is like forward folding and twisting.
Okay.
And so the aim is to stabilize and to calm. That's kind of the aim. Energetically, that's what the aim is.
Okay.
So the tradition of yoga talks about there being particular benefits of particular styles or families of postures.
Oh.
So twisting and forward folding, they're two separate families, but they sit in the kind of calming and stabilizing moon practice. So traditionally there are believed benefits energetically to doing particular postures, for sure.
So this whole, and I try to get my head around this, and the more I read about it and the more I hear about it, I find it so hard to grasp this kind of, and I know it's quite expansive, this whole yogi philosophy of energy. And some people I've like looked into stuff like Kundalini yoga about this serpent like awakening in your back and rising up through you.
Yeah.
And then what's the other thing I came across? The is it mudras? Mudras with like the hands and like energy in the fingers. I mean, can you kind of like condense in the best way you can thousands of years of yoga?
Please condense 5,000 years of yogic ideas around mudras into one. Yeah, okay, let me try.
I guess what I'm asking then is, can you give a kind of comprehensive definition of when we're discussing energy in yoga, like an energy in a room and the energy in us, what are we talking about?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay.
I can answer from some reading I've done just today, and maybe as well from a personal point of view. So we talk about traditional yogic texts talk about different layers of energy. So the physical body, as in the muscle, the fat, the skin, is one layer of energy that we would think about. Koshas, I think they're called 5 koshas. And they kind of work like a babushka doll, where you go inwards. Yeah? So they get kind of more towards the center.
Okay.
You know those Russian dolls?
Yeah. I know
come
exactly
and you
what
like
you
take
mean.
one out, there's another one in there.
Yes.
So the physical body is kind of the most exterior or hardest layer of energy when we're talking about the body, the physical vessel.
Okay.
As soon as we start going inwards, they become more and more subtle. So the breath is kind of what they say is the coarsest layer or coarsest obviousness of energy. But let me ask you a question. Have you ever walked into a room and felt an energy in the room?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
100%.
I think that And have you ever, like, this is an even more extreme example, but have you ever had your eyes closed or not been facing the way and you feel someone behind you?
Yes.
Or you feel someone's eyes on you? There is, in my opinion, and in Russell Brand's opinion, in fact, things in this world that we can neither see, touch, taste, or necessarily comprehend with the thinking mind.
Yeah.
So when we think about that, it's like infrared light. Do you believe infrared light exists? Yes. Can you see it? No.
Okay, cool.
But like I said before, and like the asana, the postures, the shapes, mudras, or putting your hands in a certain way, or ritualizing how you control yourself or how you move yourself is like the way in.
Okay.
It's the way in deeper. I can't describe to you what transcendence or like yoking or divinity is because I haven't experienced it.
Okay.
But do I think that, and I believe that there is more to me and you and us and the planet more wholly than the five senses can interpret.
Okay. I really like that example of infrared light because I think that's a pretty good way to put it because it's so complex to get your head around because we can't,
Yes.
unless I'm wrong, like a lot of this stuff isn't backed up by science. It's not like they're testing it in a lab and being like, oh, well, the yogis are right.
It
or
depends.
are they? I mean,
it depends. It's been done. So there's a text I'm reading at the moment around what's called yoga nidra, which is a yogic sleep. It's amazing.
Okay.
I know it sounds too good to be true. Yeah, and there is an example of I think it's I can't remember his name. I think it's Swami Satyananda, and it's Swami Satyananda Saraswati is in a lab. And they've hooked him up to all these machines, and he's written this book, and it's early 60s, but there is particular science around it. If you want something more kind of concrete around altering your traits, then there's a great book around meditation called The Science of Meditation. That's a really great book, and it's written by two guys who have both studied at Harvard, both dedicated meditators and yogis, and there is science. I mean, that's like saying, is there science that you should move your body? But the energetic, like the difficulty for people, and this is where the question at the beginning, the religion and the spirituality comes in, like, what do you believe?
Yeah.
And what can you embody? Like, for sure, I've definitely had some experiences where I go, whoa, I don't know what happened then. I don't know what plane I was in, but I didn't feel like I was here. As in, I'm here, but I'm not here. Okay. And that's occurred for me in different modes. Sometimes it's in a shavasana, sometimes it's been in yoga nidra, sometimes it's been in meditation, and where time becomes elastic and that it's not linear. And there is science around that. There is definitely quantum physics around, like, I think it's called string theory. String theory is this, go and look it up. It's like this really fucked up, it's just like crazy sciencey amazingness of all these things we can't see. Yeah. So
I'm not even going to try to explain string theory because I believe there's probably a small handful of people on the planet who truly understand it.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I think like most of us, we've watched half a dozen TED Talks, retain the information, and then a week later we're like,
what did they say about that thing again?
I mean, you just like try to think of like Big Bang episodes or something to try to, what did Sheldon say? It's funny like how you talk about Russell Brand, and I was doing a bit of research more into his yoga and his practice.
Okay.
And I found a really cool quote from him, and he said, it was talking kind of about the spiritual revolution. And this is from Russell Brand. He said, "It's difficult to believe in yourself because the idea of self is an artificial construct. You are, in fact, part of the glorious oneness of the universe. Everything beautiful in the world is within you."
What a beautiful quote.
It's really nice, isn't it? And this idea of the self being an artificial construct. Okay. What's your for?
It kind of goes back to what I said. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it, the one thing they say in our, lots of yoga texts is they say there's two self and capital S self and little s self.
Okay.
And that the self, the way to the self is through the self. It's all about the self.
Okay.
So when they talk about, like, the infamous they, when they talk about the self, there's a couple of ways to think about it. One is self as in ego, the ego self, as in the identifier as me, my, I. All those prepositions. Is that a preposition? No. Pronouns. Bloody hell. Yeah, so to think about me, my, and I, that's one of the self, as in that's my water bottle or my house.
Okay.
But those things don't define your actual self, which in really simplistic terms, we would say is a soul.
Okay.
The soul is the self, but it's the one that is complete on its own, that doesn't require any facading around it, or doesn't require any scaffolding like we paint onto ourselves. I am a yoga teacher. I am married. I am 31 years old. I am living in Glenelg. Like all these self-identifiers that we paste on, and it's kind of like paper mache. And so the way to get to the soul is to remove those things, all the inhibitors between you and me, all the things that make me think that I'm different to you, or that my soul or your soul is not as worthy as another. That's where the kind of that, to what I understand in that quote, that's the artificial idea of ourselves.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, the Atman is what's called your soul in Sanskrit, but the Para Atman is the collection of all of the souls, all of the Atmans, as in entirety of the Atmans collected together. It's the idea of a single drop in the ocean and the ocean in one single drop, and each of us is that. Each living thing is that.
Okay.
So the possum that crawls on your roof at night is part of that chain.
It's got to be like when that's happening at night. It's got to be difficult to remember.
Yeah,
it's part of it.
It is. Yeah, I woke up last night to a possum on my roof. I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, like I had no idea before I came to Australia. I had no idea, and then I was on a like a little weekend trip to Kangaroo Island.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, just about wildlife. I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
Yeah, it's a great little corner of the world. It's so untouched almost as well.
Yes.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. And it's good, I think, in a more holistic way, I believe, to expose ourselves back into the natural world. Because it's so easy to believe that four walls and television and a tiny contraption that we hold in our hands that connects us to the internet, PS, infrared alike, can't be seen.
Yeah.
That connects us to all of the connects, like in quotes, connects us to these things, actually, in my opinion, disconnects us from our humanity and from, like, this is not a preach, whatever.
No.
But disconnects us from the idea of divinity even more, because we don't understand natural order. It's
funny how, and we're really kind of going down this road, which is great, but one thing I found constantly, especially kind of amongst some musicians, when like everybody's fighting for the same job, if there's I don't know, whoever it is, the hottest band in town at the moment auditioning for a new guitarist, like people, like 100 guitarists are going to go for that job. I spend 6 hours a day, think, is my image right for this gig? Is my playing right? My guitar tone, my everything that goes around it, because they want to be able to put on their CV, at least in kind of like the more session world, where you play for various artists, you might do orchestral work, theatre work, whatever. It's, okay, how can I get this on my CV? I need to have this name behind me. So when I meet someone, my elevator pitch is, I've played with so-and-so. Yeah. And they're like, I know that person. That's a household name. Okay. And they've improved their self-worth. But they haven't really. That's what you're saying. They need to reconnect and let go of the egotistical self, right?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that, because I can't speak for what it's like being a guitarist, and I assume that there is a level of like qualification required, like that there is a thing. But my comment around that would be, if the desire to be seen as successful is greater than the love of playing, then that's where the disjoint is. Because the love of playing, like, that's a divine thing to do. Yeah. That's amazing. And for some people, that's the expression of their art. That's their greatest, that's their beautiful contribution to the world. Like music or mantra, like singing or repetition of words is part of, in my opinion, like some of the most amazing things that happen on this planet.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It always blows my mind if you go to a music festival and you've got a stage with just 4 individuals who collaboratively come together, decide to play a certain number of notes, just in a particular order, and then thousands of people flock and stand there
and
for
they sing,
hours.
and they repeat the words that those people wrote.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's like, it's enough to give you goosebumps. It's amazing. It's an amazing. That's to my mind a true interconnection.
Oh, okay.
That is connection. That's not fake. That's not like it's such a beautiful. It's connecting to other humans.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's connecting to divinity, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's special.
It's starting to wrap up now.
Okay.
A little bit. I want to. It's got like
a little bit.
Well, no, it's no.
It's okay. Good.
I know we could just talk about this stuff all day, and then I just be like in the editing suite for like
a year.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, we did that interview a year ago. Now it's just been aired.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about kind of consciousness and meditation. I feel like a lot of people, again, what we were talking about, the media, and sometimes what gets people into yoga is like, oh, look at that great headstand. And and meditation can be seen as, I don't want to almost say like a cliche now, but it's almost like a hipster thing. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to have my avocado on toast and I'm going to go meditate. And I've partly described myself there as well. But a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
But what do you think the true benefits of meditation are? And are they often achieved by people,
Great question. That's, for me, such a massive question to ask, because it goes right to the heart of like, what is the true benefit of being quiet and being in touch with yourself? And I don't mean that in the most like cliched kind of freaky advertisement way that it sounds, but I mean it in the, like, for each of us that's something different. I've mentioned that book, The Science of Meditation. There are clearly understood empirical benefits of meditation for people's capacity to be altruistic, for people's capacity to be less reactive, and to have what they call altered traits, so to alter themselves in a way that is of positive benefit from that individual's perspective. So I think that the science around it is sound. I think that I don't think cultural appropriation is the word, but I think that there is a level of like, it's very trendy to meditate.
It is, right?
The reality though, like speaking from someone who, I'm a yoga teacher, I meditate, that doesn't give me any clout, but I meditate every, at least, I never miss 2 days in a row.
Okay.
That's how I approach meditation. I never miss 2 days in a row. I've done I've done a meditation course. And I think the hardest thing, and if anyone's like, I'm just going to meditate, I'm like, well, good fucking luck, because the hardest thing, in my opinion, is the discipline to do it.
Okay. In
my opinion. Because you can sit there all day with your eyes closed and your spine straight, but if you are not honest with yourself, and if you, are just sitting there entertaining and I'm not saying this is wrong, because this is the mind's job to entertain thoughts and to think, like your mind's job is to keep your body alive, period. That's its job. Keep your body alive. Right. Survival. That your mind's job is to think. But the thing is, when you meditate, I have this really weird analogy that I'm about to share, but it's this idea of watching the thoughts. You're watching your mind thinking. When I used to meditate, like I said, I used to be a horse rider, and I used to ride through these beautiful pine forests, and they're really soft. They've got beautiful brown needles on the floor because they've all fallen off the trees and the green trees, and it's idyllic. It's some of the most beautiful places I've seen. I've been on horseback. And so when I was riding, I was alone once, and I was just trotting along this kind of abandoned path, and I'm like on this horse. Anyway, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
And there's this beautiful pine forest, and it's almost as though I'm watching myself from behind riding that horse. Like, who's watching you?
Okay.
So I can see the back of my head. The more important question is, who's watching? Who is it that's seeing you do the thing you're doing? And to me, that is meditation.
Right.
And that's the self, that's the soul, the Atma, the indestructible part that doesn't die.
Yeah.
Those 21 grams, that's it. That's the thing that's watching.
Great, okay. That's very cool.
And so the benefits, to get back to your actual question.
No, it's good. We went on a journey.
The benefits, the benefits of, you should just cut that bit out.
Oh no, it's so staying in this podcast now.
The true benefits of meditation are, in my opinion, stillness and silence. Two things that are not prevalent if you live a general life. Stillness and silence, and the openness to look into what it is that's occurring for you behind the masks.
Okay.
That's the benefit.
That's a really cool quote. I really like that. That's great. So, for anybody out there who has probably seen yoga as these crazy back bends and whatever else, I mean, even, like whatever movie, TV, like social media, there is still this stigma around yoga. And I do believe not all the time, sometimes a certain kind of person is drawn to it, and I think a lot of us are sort of seen as this hippie, man,
weed
it's cool.
smoking.
Right.
There's a lot as well. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't do yoga, and I'm like, that's like saying you're too, like, I can't come because I can't do yoga. It's like saying you're too dirty to take a bath. I'm too dirty to take a bath. I just can't. Like, if you can't comfortably bend down to put your jocks on in the morning, you should probably think about that. You should definitely think about, and it doesn't have to be yoga. Like, I practice yoga, but if there's a physicality in your life that's uncomfortable or a mental, like, I don't want to say issue, but like something in your life where you have moments where you're like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, that's who it's for. It's for people who are willing to look deeper than the outside.
So it's just it's that honesty to say, something to me, like, maybe, I don't believe anybody, I think it can happen, but a lot of us aren't truly 100% happy. How can we be with everything that's shoved in our faces in our lives and the challenges we face? But if we actually have the ability to look inwards at ourselves, and we can, like you were saying, like, why do I fucking hate this yoga teacher? Why am I angry? But you can actually look in yourself and say, I know so many guys who have like practiced their instrument and their craft like 8 hours a day, and then they do a performance, and to everyone else it's great, but to them they just beat themselves up and they cut themselves up about that performance. It's not healthy. It's not good.
There's two schools of thought. One is that it's not healthy and it's not good, and I don't want to live there. I don't want to live self-punishing for every mistake I ever make. Like every chord struck that was wrong. Wow, what an unhappy, not even unhappy, what a wasted use of things to be critical about.
Yeah.
Like, let's choose something like climate change that might matter.
Okay, yeah.
Or, I think you can, in my opinion, you can use yourself as an example for other people. That's what happens. You can be an example of self-love, self-forgiveness, self-awareness, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. But
it's funny how this idea of love seems to surround yoga and meditation, and this love, this community, this common unity. Like you were kind of going back to what we were talking about, the souls, and it's just great because I think personally, once you kind of step into this bubble, like, because in the media it's like you see the Instagrammers and it's like, oh my god, this is what I can do, and that may be what gets you into it. but it's like a veil gets lifted and you're like, oh wait, this is actually what it is. This is great. This is full of love and self-awareness and
self-inquiry and
yes.
interest. Yeah, and that, yeah, I liked that coming togetherness for sure. It's a really beautiful practice, and it is a practice. It's not just like, oh, I'll just rock up and do this for 5 minutes and then I'll bugger off. Yeah.
It's a conscious practice.
It's a consciousness for sure, and you know that over time for me has translated itself into really simple things like having respect for my parents, or more respect for my parents, I should say, or more respect for my partner, or more understanding when the guy from Foxtel is 5 hours late. Like it changes from the stuff that happens on the plastic 2 meters squared to how it is that your life is outside of those plastic 2 meters squared on a yoga mat. What is occurring for me?
It's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
You can spend, let's just say 3-4 days a week on a rubber mat, having somebody say to you, do this, go to these poses, stay focused, keep your breathing to a certain rhythm, and that can just translate into your whole life to the point when you're like, I can see more, I have more respect for my mum and dad. Your relationship with your partner can improve. You're just the everyday person in your life.
Yeah.
And it's really crazy. I lived in London for about 4 or 5 years, and God, I hated tourists. Every time they'd be on the escalator the wrong way.
On the wrong side, yeah.
Oh, you want to punch them. But now you're just like, it's like, namaste. But it's great. I might sound really sarcastic, but like, you genuinely have this, at least for me, who, going back to the whole practice and this constant self-improvement that so many of us, I mean, in the entertainment industry, this cutthroat industry, we have to maintain to be better. So that you're more relaxed.
There's an interesting, I was thinking just before, there's an interesting way to think about that. Do you constantly have to be better? And for lots of us, we say yes. But there's also time to avoid burnout where, and it's more of a Buddhist philosophy than it is a yogic philosophy, which is more around transcendence. But Buddhist philosophy would say you're already whole. Okay. You're actually not missing anything. Right. Part of the human experience is that if you truly, you've already got everything you need. Sometimes all you need is time, sometimes what you need is consolidation, sometimes what you need is to push, but everything you need, you already have.
It's already there.
It's already there. It's already there.
That's great.
You've got it.
I think that's a really good note to end on, actually. Thank you so much for coming along.
Worries.
It's been a pleasure to have you, and it's been really great to learn more about the yogi philosophy, your experiences, hopefully how it can benefit other people. Myself, who's just kind of got into yoga in the past 6 months, just for a bit of strengthening in my body and myself. For anybody out there who's listening, give it a go. What have you got to lose? Go to yoga, go to Pilates, try Bikram if that's for you. Give it a shot. If not, what have you lost? A couple of evenings of your life, 1 week. Try some meditation. Some of the books that Kelly was talking about today, let's check those out. And cool. We'll catch everybody in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening, guys. And thank you, Kelly.